I have just 15 minutes to tell you why sad things happen to good people. Such an important area. And I'm grateful to John Dixon, the Reverend Dr. John Dixon, for some of the thoughts in this message today. 15 minutes is hardly long enough, is it? But so it can only be sort of introductory. But I hope to give you a framework by which you can then go back and think through some of the issues and enough grounds to keep trusting God even in those areas which we cannot understand or do not know. I hardly need to take any time to introduce the subject, do I? Because we all know the sadnesses that have happened to people, good and bad alike, and that causes many people to conclude that either there is no God, or if there is, he either doesn't care or doesn't have the power to step in and do something about the sad things that are happening in our world. Their premise that if there was an all-loving God, as we're told, and an all-powerful God, as we've been told, then what possible reason could there be to allow a little baby to die? Or for that teenager killed a couple of weeks back, just outside of Orange? Or what possible reason could there be for a building to collapse in Miami? Or that typhoon which caused the mudslide in Japan? Or closer to home, my good mate, Ben Shaw, to die of a facial tumour, age 53. I have no doubt that every person watching today has had reason to question God about something that's been sad or tragic, either in their own lives or in the lives of those close to them. So here's what I want to do in our time together. First of all, I want to explore what's wrong with this world. Secondly, what is God's grand plan? Thirdly, what is he waiting for? And fourthly, what are we meant to do in the meantime? So first of all, what is wrong with the world? It doesn't take long to see that the world is in a mess, and it's been in a mess for a very long time. But what we don't fully comprehend often enough is that the world is in a mess because mankind has rejected God. We were made for relationship, but we are capable of refusing. The Bible tells us that the world was thrown into chaos when Adam and Eve decided to do their own thing. Now, we trivialize that account as if it's about eating an apple. But when Adam and Eve chose independence from God, when they decided that they would call the shots, it had a massive, profound impact on the entire universe for all time that we often underestimate. Our relationship with God broke down. Our relationship with one another broke down. Our relationship with creation broke down at that point. There is a confronting connection in the Bible between our rebellion against God and a certain disorder and upheaval in creation itself, from the DNA inside our bodies to the tectonic plates under the earth. So alongside the beauty of our world that we see all around us, we also certainly see an ugliness, a profound disorder. And that means that sad things happen to all people, good and bad. From earthquakes and tsunamis and cyclones, bushfires and cancer and MS and Parkinson's. The world is not as it was created to be because of mankind's rebellion. It's seriously mucked up. It's a sad place. It has lost its shine. Every time you hear of a death, a loss, a sadness, a grief, a war, a disaster, a famine, a king hit, someone impacted by drugs and alcohol, when you head off for a funeral. In fact, when you face the challenges and aches and pains of old age, when you face someone's bad temper, when someone offends you or mistreats you, those are all the impacts of this mucked up world in which we now live. And in the passage we read from Romans 8, we read that not only do we groan because of such things, but the whole creation groans, waiting for God to do something about it. The reality is that we are all both victims of and contributors to human evil. I know all too well the evil desires of my own heart, and perhaps you know all too well the evil desires of your own heart. Okay, so what's wrong with the world? Humankind declared independence from God, and it had a profound and devastating impact. So what is then God's grand plan? Do you know God's reaction at the rebellion of humankind? Look with me at these verses from Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted or was grieved that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. The inclination of the human heart? Only evil all the time. Not a great assessment. He was deeply troubled and grieved. And of course the first question is, why doesn't he do something about it? And the answer is that after the third chapter of the Bible, the rest of the entire library of books that we call our Bible is God's grand plan to do something. What is the plan? So radical is it that the Bible describes it as a new creation, a new heavens and a new earth. Yes, this one, the one we currently live in, is destined to come to an end. And what will the new heavens and the new earth be like? Well, multiply all that you love, all that is good in this world by a factor of thousands, and you're nearing something of the awesome nature of the new creation, minus, well, what do you loathe about this creation? Warring and fighting and death and disease and cruelty and hate and bitterness and revenge and decay and murder and fractured relationships, minus all of that, none of that will be present, none of it, not even a tiny fraction, that will all be wiped out, dealt with. So God, grieved that he had made mankind, hurt by their evil, had a grand plan to wipe out all evil, to bring this creation to an end and usher in a beautiful, magnificent new heavens and new earth without any evil or its impact. This plan is unfolded step by step in our Old Testament, but it centers around Jesus Christ and is unfolded in full in the New Testament. Jesus Christ, as we saw 2 weeks ago, is God on earth. He lived the perfect life that we cannot live, and he died the death that we deserved. But God's power is greater than all the world's evil. And when Jesus rose from the dead, God declares victory over evil. God rules and evil was defeated. And the final step in God's great plan to bring in the new heavens and the new earth, the new creation, is the return of Jesus, when he will wind up this world as it is and usher in the new creation. That's a lot to take in all of it at once, isn't it? Let me anticipate then the next most obvious question. What is he waiting for? That is, if he's going to wind up this world and finally put down evil over which he's already won victory, why doesn't he just get on and do it now? And the only answer in the Bible that I can find is from 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. Do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. So the only reason that I can see in the Bible for holding off sending Jesus back and bringing in the new heavens and the new earth is that a delay allows more time for more people to come into relationship with him. He longs that everyone should give up their rebellion and return to him. He longs for that. Maybe he's waiting for you today, for you to turn your life around and come back into relationship with him. He doesn't want you to die without knowing him. He doesn't want to banish you to keep you out from the new creation because you're still stubbornly rebelling against him. So come today. So a grand plan, a new creation, made possible by the death and resurrection of Jesus. And in the meantime, more opportunity for people to come to him. That's the big picture. But it doesn't answer all our questions, does it? There are still things we find difficult to wrestle with. And so that brings me finally to what are we to do in the meantime? That toddler run over in the driveway. That building collapse in Miami. That teenager killed on the highway outside of Orange, stopping to help a couple who had had an accident. Why don't you stop that sort of thing, God, from happening while we wait for Jesus' return? I don't fully know. Because the Bible does teach that God can do what he wants. He can and does move in human hearts. But it would be fascinating to have a closer look at what that might mean. So what kind of world would we be living in if God overrode our will all the time? What if every single time a crook pulled a trigger on a gun, or a husband wanted to betray his wife, or a businesswoman wanted to withhold resources from the poor, or any such scenario that you could dream up with of evil? What if God stepped in and overrode our will? What kind of world would we live in? And why stop there? What if every time I wanted to give, to keep all my money for myself, I found myself giving it away? What if you wanted to raise your voice at your spouse and suddenly found yourself strangely silenced? What if you wanted to look for something you shouldn't on the internet and your modem suddenly disintegrated? What if you wanted to toot the horn impatiently at that car in front and suddenly your left hand was paralyzed? You see, asking why God doesn't step in and stop all the evil raises all sorts of other questions. And well, you might say, well, Mark, hang on, not all the small stuff, but only the really serious, big stuff. But where would you draw the line before it got anywhere near you? What sort of world would it be if God stepped in to stop all the evil? It wouldn't be a world where we would be asking, why does God allow evil? But it would be a world where we ask the more larger philosophical question, why doesn't God allow us any free will? Brothers and sisters, if God were simply but profoundly to put a stop to all evil, I wouldn't be standing here preaching, and you wouldn't be sitting there watching. So in the meantime, we don't and we can't know all the answers, but we can know this, that he is with us in our suffering. Psalm 46, verse 1 and 2. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the mountains should fall into the sea. So we run to him as our refuge. We draw strength from his strength, and we trust that he is right with us in our troubles, in our sadnesses, in our tragedies. And we know that he knows suffering, for in the person of Jesus, he knew persecution and pain and ridicule and death. So we trust him. We trust that because he has given us his son Jesus, he is utterly, completely on our side. He's completely for us, and that ultimately, at the end of Romans 8, we read that nothing can ever separate us from his love. So even though the way is hard, especially when the way is hard, we put our small hand into his big hand, like a toddler with their mum or dad, and we feel safe. We rest assured, even though we don't understand all that is happening around us. Why do sad things happen to good people? Well, sad things happen to all people, good and bad, because the world is no longer perfect as it was when it was created. It's not perfect because, although we were called to obey, we are capable of refusing. And when humanity at large refused, at that moment, the world was not all that it once was. But God promises a day a day of justice, a day of comfort, a day of restoration and renewal, when the new creation will come and all that is bad and wrong about this world will be utterly gone. And I say, bring it on. Your kingdom come. But in the meantime, keep trusting him. He loves you. He's committed to you. And even though you may not understand or even like what you're facing, he is with you in it. He will never leave you or forsake you. So run to him. Rest in him. By all means, take your questions to him, but trust him that he is utterly for you. Amen.